right? Minor details.
Okay.
Try little type reader, right?
Sweet, thank you.
I need it.
My phone, my clock was too low.
Like 9 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got another snooze in there.
I look, my, that's, just for pigs. Or,
Are you having a 4-H summer?
no, I thought it was supposed to work something.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah. I think allergies and stuff too, I think.
Yeah.
No, she did the rest of the month off.
And if you holler at me if I forget to advance slides, because I've got some things going on here.
Do you want me to advance for you?
Well, I don't think the cord will reach you, so it's okay. I think I'll hear it. Just let me know if I'm like fine.
Yeah.
I could just sit right there.
Jody, did you bring the bag? No, that was Jen.
That was me, please, fruit strips for all, please have some.
This is like Kirby, we signed a program this afternoon, and then this program.
I don't know even I.
I should probably grab the Lego one.
Okay.
Oh, yes, that one's always so fun.
You really don't need mine then.
Thank you.
And Jody, I have to tell you, I had the family that wanted the gift certificate.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
You want to
Week and a half ago.
Yeah.
I was like, well, here's your choices. And I said, market 55, and Dad was saying, oh, remember that's where we got that soap? And I was like, oh, and it also works with the Shake Shack. And he's like, that one, we bought that one. That was very cute.
Oh.
Thanks.
I love those. Now, who doesn't like lobster ice cream?
Who doesn't?
Don't have soul.
So,
Oh, sorry. I forgot that for you.
Hers is
Yes.
better than mine, that's amazing.
I
have a big book in here. Book of information.
You prop your foot up. There we go.
Yeah. It was more comfortable sitting here like that. And they're gonna, make the real drawing. They also matters, kind of.
Yes, because they launched. Okay, we're gonna get started. Hey, everybody.
So I am Jen Bouse. I'm representative in Ward 1, and sitting at this table with me is the admin committee.
Christy, no, Jody Ronning, Ward 3.
And all of council depends on how many questions y'all have. So this is a draft budget review, and it's also a public presentation. If we go to the next slide. So I just want to thank everybody for participating, because this meeting isn't necessarily a requirement. It is a thing that the city is doing to try to improve participation, and just it's an opportunity for the benefit of everyone, because it's important that all of you have like a cursory understanding of the city's budget, and that you feel comfortable asking questions and offering input. And that you can read these documents such that you're able to weigh the pros and cons of suggested budget changes, or any ballot initiatives that might come in front of you that affect the budget. And so that's why we're doing this today. And I just want to thank everyone for coming. And at the end of this meeting, so here's the goals for today. At the end of this meeting, you should be able to understand broadly what projects, amenities, and services your tax dollars support. You should be able to understand broadly the revenue sources for our government, their limitations, and their appropriate use. And you should know when and how to engage on budget topics as a resident. So that's really what we're aiming for today. And I'll go to the next slide. Yeah. So general overview, we're gonna go over just some basics and just to put the budget in context. And then very specifically, we're gonna go through these budget documents and look at general fund, special fund, capital projects, enterprise funds. We're gonna look at a budget resolution example so that you can see what one of those looks like. And we'll review all of the compiled questions and some of the answers that have been submitted from residents to date. And then we'll review next steps and what comes after tonight. So we're going to try to keep this meeting, as I said, to 90 minutes or less. And, you know, after a few hours, let's face it, everybody's tired and needs a break. So if we aren't able to answer everyone's questions tonight, we have Terry, who's offered to document everyone's questions, and there'll be additional opportunities to participate in the coming months and get answers. Before we get going, I just want to ask everybody to kind of commit to 2 frames of mind as we go along this evening. So the first is that, again, the intention behind this is to work together, to share ideas for better processes and decision-making, and also to come to the budget conversation with a spirit of curiosity. So I've been working with budgets for a long time, and every budget looks a little different. Every budget can be a little bit confusing. I find the city's budget to be fairly complex. And so I just want to encourage that there are no stupid questions. Be brave in your asking. Know that if you have a question, chances are your fellow neighbors also have that question. And keep an open mind if you encounter new concepts or ideas that challenge you. So again, the idea is to give an opportunity for the residents to actually ask questions and have a conversation about the budget. Because future opportunities, if they're in front of city council, the way that that works is you're able to come to this podium and talk to the council for 3 minutes about your questions and concerns, but council isn't able to answer those questions in a city council meeting. So this is meant to be a little more informal and an opportunity to just directly engage with questions and concerns. So that is what we are doing today. Yeah. So first, I just want to look at, you can actually click because that's a live link. Oh, I should also say this is meeting being recorded. So you'll have a chance to look at the recording later. This presentation will be available on the website immediately. In fact, I think it's already there, or it will be there tomorrow. And these links that I've put in the presentation are live. So you can open up the presentation and say, I want to know what resource that is, and just click on it and it will take you there. So this is the city's organizational chart, just to give you a sense of like who does what. And I wanted to make sure that everybody had a chance to look at that before we go on. So there's all of us as city representatives and staff are all on there. So that's just good for you to know. I wanted to share with you council committees. Looking back now, I think if you just close the page, it'll take you back to the presentation. Thank you. So Red Lodge City Council has 4 committees. We are the Admin and Finance Committee here. So there's also a Public Works Committee, and the folks who are listed here and highlighted, those folks are the chairs of those committees. So we have a Public Works Committee that addresses water, sewer, streets, alleys, solid waste, parks, city facilities, land use and planning. Kelly heads up that one, and you can read about each one of what these committees do. Administration and finance, that's us. We're talking about the budget today. We talk about resort tax, contracts, economic development, public health and safety, fire, police, management. So again, just kind of setting the groundwork for this conversation. If you've been to any of the previous meetings about the budget, some of these will look familiar, but it's important to reiterate. So why do we have a budget? The budget is the plan of expenditures and revenues approved and authorized by resolution to meet the essential public safety, public health, and public well-being needs of the city. And I added this. To me, a budget is the clearest expression of community values and priorities, which is why part of the reason why we're having this meeting is to give you an opportunity, if you feel like this budget doesn't represent your values and priorities, for you to say so. The purpose of the annual budget is to fund the programs and projects that we think should be funded, to form the basis of taxes and charges, to establish legal spending limits, to guide staff operations, and to assist in preventing financial crisis. This is a little bit about our timeline every year. So the fiscal year runs from July 1 to June 30th. So we just started a new fiscal year. We are required, as every city, to have an annually adopted budget by Montana Code Annotated. We receive what is called our certified taxable value from the state of Montana in August every year. And so what that means is once we have a draft budget, we are reviewing that. Once we receive the certified taxable value from the state and we've collected feedback on the draft, then the city reviews a preliminary budget in July. City council will review a preliminary budget in July and then accept final adoption of the budget at the last council meeting in August, typically after receiving that certified taxable value from the state. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this. There's a lot. This is a little busy. And I see Dave in the audience. It's a little real familiar to you. So this is the budget process flow chart. In an ideal situation, this is how we engage with the budget, how the city engages with the budget process over the year. So quarterly budget reviews in October, December, and March. Budget instructions are sent to departments following the first council meeting in April. Departments review personnel and proposed budgets with the clerk and the treasurer and the mayor in late April, ideally. Department budget requests are due to the mayor in early May. The department budget requests are due to council's second council meeting in May. Departments discuss requests with council early June. Council presents preliminary general fund budget to the public, first council meeting in June. That didn't happen this year. We'll talk about that. Council approves preliminary general fund budget. The council holds budget work sessions, reviews department requests to discuss operational strategic plans now and in August. Again, we'll get the certified taxable value in August sometime. We'll have a final discussion and adjustment to the budget and a public hearing, and then we'll have public adoption in late August, early September at the latest. And then we are required by state law to not approve budgets to the state. That's how that looks in an ideal situation. I'll point out that for this year, we had meetings. So when I say we, I say city council was invited to multiple budget meetings. The department has to talk about each specific department's budget. And that happened over the spring and early summer. And then we're having this meeting. And then at the next city council meeting, which is this Tuesday, we will have a working draft to review as a full council.
Jen, can I just interject? It
Yep.
wasn't full council, it was admin and finance.
Admin and finance.
That was involved in the department head budget.
In the
Yeah.
department head
Yeah.
review,
Yeah.
sorry, yes, thank you for that clarification. And then after that, we'll wait on getting the information from the state, and then we'll work on a final budget. And I'll also say that the public will be invited to, you know, to participate and comment at each of those city council meetings as well. So there's at least 3 more where the budget will be on the agenda. Okay.
Your meeting's not working.
Oh, thank you.
I just logged into it. It's
Oh.
working.
Well, you've got it, Tom? Okay.
Because I
I
can't.
think we're good then.
I'm running on my phone, so I can actually see.
Oh, sweet. So, every year our budget is set by the state using a pretty basic formula. This year's property tax budget is equated by looking at the total amount of tax revenue collected from the previous year and half the average rate of inflation for the previous 3 years, and that is set by state law. And so what that means, crucially, is that our budget does not grow at pace with inflation on its own. So that is an important thing for everybody in the community to understand. I did put this here, or I left it here mostly because there's another virtual public meeting coming up that I want you all to know about, and it'll be on Tuesday. So it's a little counterintuitive, but basically the gist, what I want you to understand is that just because our property values have gone up significantly, that doesn't necessarily directly equate to suddenly the city has more general fund or has more dollars. That's not how it works. And the Department of Revenue has been hosting public meetings in every county all throughout July to help people understand their assessment notices. And the next virtual public meeting, and I believe their last virtual public meeting is July 25th from 4 to 5:30. So it's right before the next city council meeting. So this link will take you, like if you want to know how to join that via Zoom, if you click on this link, it'll take you to that information.
Was this supposed to be online because it didn't seem to be working to access it to go to meetings?
So interesting. So 2 of you had trouble, but we've got 2 people here that had no problem.
Calendar.
I used
On
the
the
one,
webpage.
On the agenda?
I used the one that was on the city calendar.
You know, the one that was on the city calendar. Did you guys? use
I
the one that was
I
on-
linked into it from the Google groups email.
And I used the city court or the city website and the calendar, and it
That one I tried for sure and it didn't work, and I might have tried through an email, I think.
Okay.
But Jeff's sitting at home waiting for it to, he wasn't able to get it. I'm gonna show them on. Is he now? Or-
Jeff.
Okay, so maybe
Okay.
I didn't wait long enough.
Jeff, can you
Okay.
hear us?
Did you see me up there, age for one? Or maybe you didn't. No.
Well, we've been also looking at slides.
Yeah, I think maybe the link on the Google Meet is on the Google is not working. That says it's not live, but so
And mine just said,
if you go to the
I'm not in the meeting. Because I can't.
I don't know, if the link in the agenda, let's see.
Tom, which one were you on that worked?
So there's a link in the agenda, and that works,
That works.
but the one that was sent out on the Google groups does not work.
Okay. So, that's like plans with technology, folks. We are recording it, so hopefully what we'll do is we can capture, we can put the recording on for folks that pick the wrong, or the link that doesn't work.
He got in because I could hear you
Perfect.
guys in the background.
Okay.
Angie, I can email you and, well, I'm here now. Okay, yours, do you want to say yours? Yeah. Okay. I have to go for it.
Okay.
I won't worry about it.
Okay. All right. Thank you for letting us know.
Sorry to interrupt it.
No, that's okay. I appreciate it. So where are we? You want to go to the next one? Yeah, go to that meeting. Or call Department of Revenue.
There's two different numbered links, so there's two
Okay.
different go-to meetings set up and they're in different
With
spots.
different numbers.
Got it. Okay. All right. We are recording it. Okay. So, again, just highlighting that our city budget doesn't grow with inflation on its own. The Red Lodge City General Fund buying power has decreased by 14.9% from 2015. Total inflation since 2015 was 29.8%. In the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and we have not done anything significantly to raise taxes during that time. Important estimated dates for public participation. Some of this has already happened, but I wanted to point out the rest of it. So we're meeting today, Thursday, the 20th. The budget has been out since July 11th, and the revenue side has been out since the 13th. And so those are readily accessible on the website. If you go to resources and budget, you can find them very easily. Also, this presentation will be there as well. As I mentioned, you can still submit questions to me, and I'll just keep fielding those until we have our budget review as a full council on July 25th. And then public hearing dates for the final budget adoption will likely be August 8th and August 22nd. But again, that might move based on when we hear from the state. I thought this was really useful. This is also from the 2018 presentation, but just to look at our fund structure. So we've got a number of different funds here. We're going to go over them each in detail, but they have different restrictions and different uses. And so I think it's good for you to see, primarily we're going to look at general fund tonight, but we do have some special revenue funds. We'll also look at enterprise funds, water, sewer, solid waste this evening. Okay, so let's get into it. Does everybody have a copy of expenses and revenues? If not, and you need them, there are some right up here. There are extras floating around if you need them.
I moved the extras up there because we ran out.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Where are the extra hard copies, sorry?
All of the hard copies are
All up here on the.
Is it 3 pages?
Oh, yeah, because those don't have
Sorry,
paper
some of
clips.
them didn't get stapled.
It's a lot of pages.
Oh, so maybe
So if I grab the stapled one, is that all I need?
You want to go from general fund
all the way to solid waste.
And just so you know, there's a link on the site, but it is not up to date. It is not. No, all of this is up to date. But on the same page is the link to your presentation, but it must be a previous version.
Yes, because I'm not gonna put it out there until after I'm done. Yeah, like with the recording and all that jazz. Yep. Okay. So we are gonna start with the general fund. So the general fund is used to pay for ordinary operations for our local government, which are financed with property taxes and other non-tax general revenues and not accounted for in another governmental fund. So that is the very first page of both of these packets. And so where revenues come in from property that fund the general fund, property taxes, entitlement shares, court fines, business licenses, animal licenses, charges for using parks, recreation, library, police services, and then services provided. Okay. Services provided, public safety, public works, parks and recreation, library, general government. So what I tried to do, so for the next bunch of slides, what I tried to do was say, okay, here's these line items, and we can look through these in detail. I might take just a minute to say, does anyone have any questions on the specific line item as we go through? But what I did with all of these funds is I essentially came up with 2 slides for each one that has like the biggest slices of pie about where the money comes from. So if there's 50 slices of pie, I didn't slice it that far, but I did put the major ones, and then I have an other category for you know, the rest, the really tiny slivers or the smaller slivers in comparison to the rest. So that you could look and see what our major general fund sources are, and then also what our major general fund expenditures are. So that's really how I tried to do this, to kind of help you walk everybody through these more detailed documents. So we've got, you know, obviously, we've got entitlement share, we've got general business licenses here. The marijuana tax is a new slice of the pie here, and that's almost 2% on its own. So I wanted to point that out. Transfer from health insurance, I'm going to pull up, let's see if I can, my slide. Pull these up. And then, of course, one pie. So we also move money around. So, for example, 8.6% of the general fund is coming from resort tax. And so that's in this pie too. Also, pretty big slice of pie from the county to help us support the library. That's important to know.
Jen, just a quick question. It doesn't appear that you have property taxes in that
Mm-hmm.
pie set.
She's looking through her, pie chart. Get the numbers.
So, here we go. So, we aren't gonna know what that is until the state tells us what it is. You see what I mean? Like.
Yeah, but that would be, if that was, I mean, you can estimate it, but it's gonna be some 900,000, 850,000 of. 700?
Yeah.
It's not, yeah.
Okay.
But when we were looking at, so, I might be looking at line for a couple of things, but essentially, that's not on here yet because we don't have
So this is the breakdown of everything but.
of the things we know.
I thought
Yeah,
property
yeah,
tax.
Mhm. Yeah,
So we don't have it for the prior years on here either then, correct?
for prior years.
On the general fund.
So that's the revenue that you're looking at.
Gotcha, thank you.
Okay.
If you hit the, if you go into speaker and then say no audio, it'll shut that off. I heard.
Okay,
Did everyone hear what Lonnie said?
this is non-tax revenue.
What's up there is a non-tax.
Right.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay,
So you might want to put a note on that slide
sure.
so people are aware.
Yep, I can do that. In fact, I can do it right now.
And then just one more quick question, I think you just mentioned that the county local option tax is library. Is that what you're saying?
No, there's a separate slice of pie that's library.
Library from county.
One is library.
Oh, yeah, do
We're
library
at
from county.
338000.
Yep, I do see that. So what was the county local option?
This is what we get from the county. I'm not quite sure from the county level,
Okay.
but, could you get that?
Get some level of, there's some share from the county.
And that,
So my understanding is like, some vehicle registration.
It could be.
And that should be
And it
entitled.
varies every year.
And I think the marijuana actually goes to, a lot of it goes to the county and then comes back into.
Yeah.
So is this marijuana, I'm guessing that's actually resort tax, or is that our portion of the county?
that's our portion of the county.
Yeah.
Yep. And I,
For 2 quarters,
No, they
you're estimating?
No, they collected it for all of last year. Whenever they voted on collecting that 3%,
Okay.
then it's from that date forward. So I'm not sure if it was a full year or if it was.
It was from when I got it from the county, it was from December through June,
Okay, so it's 6 months.
is what's reflected.
So
we're bigger than that. Right, so we're just being judicious about not overestimating because it's the first time that in the chart, so we want to be conservative. Okay,
Excuse me, what is the
Yeah.
transfer from health insurance? It's a big number and it's a steady number.
yep.
I was wondering about that too.
So it's our group health. So we have a group progressive mill levy, and it's calculated by how many employees. There's a state form that we have to use that calculates out how much we can levy for group health, and then that transfers into the general fund. So any employees that are paid out of the general fund that have health insurance, that levy pays for it. The enterprising funds, they pay the health insurance out of those funds, it's not. But it's a transfer into the general fund.
Outside of our general fund bills.
So it's related to employees then?
Yep.
But I mean, this is so consistent, is our employment status that consistent?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much. Okay. I think what I want to do is go over the general fund, like each fund's revenues and expenditures together, and then I'll pause and see if there's questions. I feel like in order to get the full you need to get the full picture before you come forward with questions. So, moving on to the next slide, which is where's the money go for general fund? Oh, it says where's the money come from. It should say where's the money go. Oh, never mind. I'm just not.
Now, that where the money goes is the full general fund, including property taxes, right? Now I'm maybe,
Right.
so
Yeah.
now I'm maybe back to Tom's, it might be better on the general, where it comes from to include it, just a little asterisk. that
Yep,
says
I'll
it's
do that. I'll absolutely do that. That's a great suggestion. So again, with where does the money go, I tried to focus on the biggest slices of pie so that you can see that visually. And kind of highlight it. Again, I'm pulling direct line items out of here. So as you're following along, you can see those. So fund expected expenditures. So you will notice that our police are a big chunk of that pie, fire. So basically, you know, our safety support is a decent chunk of this pie. And again, you'll see the library here, but remember, we do get significant support from the county for running the library. So that's why I want you to see both of these pie charts before you ask questions, because that income directly goes back out in support of the library. I'll make a mention about streetlights here. It looks like a small piece of pie, but I just want to mention that in general, our city is, along with all residents here and most people in the region are experiencing quite a significant hike in their electric bills, and the city is no different. And so you'll see as we're moving forward, we're trying to anticipate those added expenses when we're able to. Let's see here. City Hall's a little slice of the pie. Streets is in here a little bit. Streets the payment for streets kind of comes from a couple of different spots. So we'll talk about that as we move along. Again, so you'll see one slice of this pie is employee retirement. So just like Lonnie said, that income in, there's a corresponding expense. That's how that works. I will say, and Lonnie, you might have already corrected this, but the last time we printed the general fund expense worksheet, there was a small edit to the calculation in the total. Do I need to? You didn't change it yet?
No,
Okay.
so that when it comes up for council.
We can just amend it there. So, accidentally, the council salaries, that $5,300 for council salaries, that got counted twice on accident. So we actually have in our total, the total expenditures is actually $5,300 less than the number that you see there, so we'll amend that, as a council, but that means we have another $5,300 that we didn't know we had, so that's a good thing. But that just, it's just when we were tallying it up and telling it to run the function, it accidentally ran that way. Now we amend. It is now 6:03, so I'm gonna move it along a little bit faster. But general fund's probably where most of the action's gonna happen tonight, so does anybody have any specific line item questions about general fund, either on the revenue side or on the expense side? Carrie does.
I just had I don't know, maybe one comment. I like that there's a section on here for notes, but I guess I would like to see more of them, so it's a little easier as you're going down there to figure out what some of these line items are for. And along that lines, I was curious why, and I have to go from memory because I did forget my folder at home. So I noticed on some of these, we have salaries and benefits listed out, but we don't have that for the staff. Like clerk, we only have salaries. Is there a reason why we don't have benefits in that too? And then the other thing I was looking at was the audit. I noticed, one of the first line items is an audit for $25,000, but yet I see audit kind of peppered throughout here for other line items. Or I'm just curious why it's broken up.
Because they come in August and help us with year-end closeout. So the actual audit itself just comes out of that one line item. The other audit line items and stuff is for helping year-end closeout of all the funds.
That, and that would be to me a really good comment to have on the side, so that when someone goes through there, if they see a bunch of line items that say audit, they understand what those different costs are for. So if we could add those kind of things, would be really helpful.
Okay. Yeah, and the city pays for an audit every single year.
So the audit would actually be the total of each one of those lines.
No, so under expenditures, actually what Lonnie was saying is we basically have two services from the auditors. One is they do an annual audit of our expenses, and then they give us a report on ways that we can improve our processes and procedures and things. And that's the $25,000 line item. You're free to chime in if I'm getting it wrong, but, and then the other line items, the smaller ones where it says, for example, under the court, it says audit $500, right? The other thing that the auditors do is they help us close out our books every year. And so that's a second interaction. And the process of closing out the book is a benefit to all of the departments. And so it's basically the departments that can absorb that cost by splitting it up. That's how we do that. And they sit down and help departments close out their.
The 25,000 is total for all of it. No.
It's
a separate line item.
There's two costs for everything.
One's an audit and the other ones are other duties they do, but it's the same people that are the auditors. That's why it's confusing. So
it's yeah.
Move on.
Two functions.
Can we go back to my thing about benefits?
Right. Oh, like why some of them just say salary and why some of them say salary.
Yeah.
But don't know the answer to that question.
Like under clerk, it says salaries and it doesn't have the benefits, but under judge, it has that and some of the
Because
others.
of the 100%. So like the police department is 100%. All of those employees in the police department is 100% out of the general fund. The other departments, they're a percentage out of, not a full 100%. So to break it down on each one is kind of cumbersome.
Well,
to break them all out.
Okay, so what I don't understand is how come I see on, like I say, let's go to report, salary underneath benefits. How come there's not even a line under, says clerk, salary, but there's no line for any benefits? Where would that line for benefits be?
I believe in the previous budget, it was asked to split out the judges from benefits and his salary. That's why they were like that.
So is that salary include, like, so is that a
Yeah.
weighted, that
So our- so the
salary
rest
slash
of the-
budget?
Yes, so the rest of the salaries are weighted with the benefits, but because they are a percentage, not a full 100%.
I get that part.
It would be totally confusing and it would be, we have tons of pages, because if you're gonna break out everybody's benefits.
I understand that. I guess one suggestion I might make on that is where it says salaries then under clerk, it should say salary slash benefits, so that it's clear that that's included in there. Where it's broken out as a line item in some of the others. You see what I'm saying?
It is listed there, Terry, under the total salaries and benefits. So, I'm sure, I guess, yeah, we could clean it up, but it does say it there. It's just not in both locations.
So each one of the salaries include benefits.
It says total salaries and benefits under, as a subtotal. So it does denote that it's salaries. It does denote that it's a weighted number.
Right. Yeah, okay. I'm just saying, to me, one of the things, when you are trying to go through something that's, line item by line item, and you don't have the background, it's a very easy fix, right, to add in just notes so it makes it clear. That's all I'm saying, if you're gonna have new people looking at it every year.
Do we have any other questions about the general fund?
I just have one question on the audit. Is there a timeline on that? Does the state require that you have an audit completed by a certain time after the fiscal year is over?
So we'll get to that in the questions. I got a bunch of questions on the audit, and so we'll get to that at the end.
Okay.
But the short answer is our audit's done when the auditors can make it to us. They have to go to every city, every community. There's only so many of them, and so we get put on the calendar every year, and they come when they come.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but we'll also address that later.
Okay.
Any other general fund questions?
I noticed that there was like a double green asterisk under planning, salaries, and directors. And there's no reference to that asterisk, so I don't know why that's there and what that means.
I think that you're denoting those
Yeah,
percentages,
so the
right?
percentages changed. So last year, the planning director was paid out of water and sewer more. And after kind of reviewing what she did for the year and stuff, we changed that because she's not doing as much in this coming year for water and sewer projects and involvement. So we pulled more of her salary back into the general fund. So
And that's what the asterisk means?
yeah, so it's just to note that. And then the planning assistant is a new position. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was asked, and I forgot to put it on there, but I was asked the last time we met to put a percentage on the planning assistant. So because that planning assistant is between recycling and the planning department.
And the contracted planner, is that Great West?
Yeah, correct. These are
Just,
great questions. Yep.
just a note or a question, it's not really a question, it's a note, that does not appear, with the exception of a small amount in the library, that there is any capital in the general fund budget.
Say it one more
It does
time.
not appear that there's any capital expenditures within the general fund budget.
I would expect a lot of it to be enterprise funds, but like water, sewer, et cetera.
Well, there's differences, I mean, it's a lot of it's falling into resort tax, I think is the point
Yeah,
there.
I can
but
tell where you're coming from.
Just the point that there is no budget for capital items within the city general fund budget.
There's a computer. Well.
That would not qualify as capital unless it's a really expensive computer.
$1,500.
We're 2,500 or is it 5,000? Capital is 2,500 or 5,000?
It's a very good point, Tom. Thank you.
I think some of the other questions that I had were like the 2023 budget for under library, ground, snow removal. The budget was 3950. They spent 2914, which is probably a solid number. So hopefully there's no more expense. Yes, you raised the request to 6,500.
So grounds improvements includes quite a few things. Snow removal is the big one that increased by a lot. And so we were only able last year to sort of partially fund that. And so it was a goal this year to more fully fund it so that we could remove the snow on the highway side of the library as well.
So it was fully.
And just so you know, the library funds, they, the city commits to a certain amount of mills every year, and they get the county money, and then it's up to the library board to make that work.
Right.
So we don't really have a lot of input necessarily in their budget. We just-
Yeah. We have the ability to have an influence over the number of mills that we allot to the library, but then it's up to the library board to set their budget.
And there are things like the park board project, they spent 28,000, but we're gonna give them another 80,000 budget.
Most of the Parks Board budget, a lot of their expenses come in June, because that's when they're doing most of their work. And they actually, saved a lot of their money this last year because they were going to, if I remember right, resurface the tennis court, and the tennis court ended up having a lot more issues. So that
And that was
project did not have.
$40,000.
Yeah, it's got a sinkhole in it, so that $40,000 did not get spent on the tennis court.
And I'm not missing, but the park board budget is not in the.
No, that's the resort tax.
Just wanted to make sure there wasn't another budget.
No.
Yeah.
Those were questions that I was asking when you see it really high from what was spent.
Yes,
As we all know, if you
Yep.
don't spend it, you lose it.
that's the first thing I was looking at, and I agree.
Well, just like the resort tax project development, was budgeted 134,000, they spent 10,000, and we budgeted 170.
Well, let's,
And I see an asterisk there.
let's go to resort tax. Let's talk resort tax.
So-
As long as everybody's good with moving on.
The resort tax, because we never know how much money we'll get in with resort tax, we like to put a few projects out there that are kind of more wish list items. And, if we don't collect that money, it's not going to be spent. And that, what you just read, was one of those funds. So, that's why only $10,000, because we did not collect as much money as we had budgeted the revenue for.
But you expect to collect 170,000.
We're actually budgeting our revenue for resort tax at 1.8 million. But you also have, an ending balance in your resort tax at the end of the year. And so when we do our budget expenditures, we'll take our revenue, our estimated revenue, plus our ending balance, and that's what we have to work with. But then we always have things, I mean, we just don't spend the resort tax until we have it. And
So
so,
they can roll over their balance.
well,
Yeah,
no.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can.
yeah,
You
yeah.
can.
So the resort tax is a constrained fund, so it has one, money can't go in and out of it.
Right.
You know, it doesn't get moved to someplace else, it stays within the resort tax. And the piece is, so I think the best way to describe that line is it's basically a cash reserve account. It's designed so that when we bring in resort tax money, that the resort tax committee has goals for resort tax expenditures, but we don't want to budget it specifically because we're actually not expecting to get it. But we need to, so what happened one year is that we didn't budget adequately for it and we lost that money to property tax relief. And so that's why that sits in there. It really is just a way of saying, hey, there are future resort tax projects that we have in the pipeline. If we get additional funding, if we have an incredible year, then we'll look at those resort tax, but we're not going to designate them now because we don't know what they are.
So it's a balancing act. You can't rely on it to cover the bills, but you put, we'll pay $400,000 extra to paying off the pool early. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen.
Right.
Exactly right. Very good. It's so great you guys are here. Awesome.
For those that don't know, I chair the resort tax advisory committee, which is why I had some of that.
So one thing I want to mention about this pie chart that you're looking at right now is that I am hoping to connect with Danae over the next couple of days to break out the 98% resort tax into, the specifics of the resort tax. So like liquor and, lodging, thank you. So, and I think we'll easily be able to do that, I just wasn't able to do it by this evening. So, I will update that piece of the pie when I have that data. And we do have it, it's just, I just didn't have a chance.
We did change the categories, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So there's kind of a little bit of a switch, to modify those categories just to better reflect how things get reported. So for example, we used to have bars and restaurants in separate categories, we combined them to a single, category.
And those are decisions that are made by the resort tax committee.
Yeah, so it's not food and liquor anymore, it never was, really, because
It was bar versus restaurant, and no one knows what, with, like Bogart, and I still have no
Which one
idea.
am I?
With Bogart's a bar or restaurant,
Right.
I have absolutely no idea how it was classified.
How many margaritas did you sell? That's it.
A lot of markets.
Yeah, so we did update that pie chart. You're probably looking at the one from 2018. Yeah, so it'll look a little different because since we've implemented resort tax, again, the resort tax committee has come up with better, more accurate split. So I will add that when I have it. But I also wanted to point out here that we do have pool fees coming in. So that's also a new line item essentially. And that's basically if you pay to use the pool, that money is going to be put towards upkeeping the pool through this, yeah.
Why is that showing up in a resort tax pie chart rather than in a general fund pie chart?
What we did, because the pool is completely being funded out of resort tax, it was decided that any fees should go back to helping fund the pool. And in order to do that, we have to put it back into the resort tax fund. It's a separate cash.
And Lonnie double checked to make sure that was a thing we could do, because it's a new, we did have this conversation, they were like, can we do this? I don't, yeah.
Yeah,
but
it can't be used for anything else, it can only be used for the pool, it's just like the recycling fees. It's kind of its own little enterprise fund within the resort tax. I mean, I guess you could do a transfer, internal transfer over, but.
I think the point there, and I think there's a good point made, is that we made a commitment that the resort tax would fund the pool, and that was voted on, and that was a lot of what was talked about in when we voted to renew the resort tax, that one of the items that it would fund was the pool. And I think that was probably driven a lot by the fact that the pool was closed when that vote happened, and people wanted the pool, and they were willing to support the resort tax in order to continue the pool.
Yep.
So,
So really,
how it's accounted in numbers could be debated potentially, but the intention, my belief is the intention in the resort tax renewal was that the resort tax would help ensure the continued operation.
And I agree with everything Tom just said. This is just talking about where resort tax money comes from. And there's lots of, if that's resort tax money that's the over and above from the pool, it makes sense here. But I think people are gonna look at this and, this is what events, for instance, bring into our town, and pool revenues is not resort tax. It's going to the pool, I get. A lot of where resort tax money goes is definitely gonna show that it's going to a pool, but to me, resort tax, if you're dividing up, it is the numbers you're talking about. Is it a bar that sells burgers? Is it a food place that sells alcohol, or breaking it down? But that's a square peg in a round hole from
I suppose,
seeing.
it doesn't make sense to put it anywhere else, but I get your point. I like the idea, I certainly can do another asterisk on the slideshow that just kind of says, look, this is it's here, but it's different than the collection of resort tax via those other.
Is non-tax revenue, just like we looked at the non-tax.
Right,
revenue
right,
in
right,
general
right.
fund. So maybe you can put an asterisk somehow on there.
Or you could literally do it, if you're treating it like a mini enterprise fund, then pattern it after your enterprise fund.
Is it it's the only non-tax revenue in general fund?
Well,
or in resort tax?
yeah, I understand what you're saying, for sure, Dave.
If you're looking at the revenues separately from the expenditures, I get that, but I also want, the idea was to have expenditures and revenues such that, you know, when you see pool as a significant line item under resort tax, you can see all of the revenue that comes in to support those expenditures.
Also.
That's the idea. That's the idea. But in the interest of time, I'm noting that. Can you note that too, Terry?
Just a couple of quick comments on this budget. The Resort Tax Committee reviewed this budget and had a couple of comments back, and mostly they relate to the capital improvements, the $400,000 within the streets, and where that will be going. And so I think that discussion will happen, but the majority of the expenses and division, the Resort Tax Committee believes are appropriate for expenditures within the resort tax. And the street, we believe is appropriate. It's just about where it fits in the priority of improvements within it.
So, and that's based on your meeting on Monday?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, and I think it came down to basically the discussion of, is it just going to pave one block? Or is it going to, you know, resurface or fill a bunch of potholes throughout all of town?
So resort tax is okay, the resort tax committee, I just want to make sure, you're okay with this $400,000 remaining here under the budget, but you want detail from the city about what it's going to be spent on?
And yeah, and it's priority, because if you look, the resort tax grand total is a little over $2 million. Last year, it's about a little over $1.1 million in revenue. So you put the $400,000 from streets and the $470 from project development together, those end up being kind of your expenditure. It's a lot, that you carve those two off, then we kind of have basically a balance of income and expenditures within that budget.
Yep.
And so while some of that may be expendable on with reserve cash, it's not sustainable within the budget if these items are sustainable, need to be sustained. If everything else has to be sustained, those items are non-sustainable items. And so there just needs to be a little bit more thought in how that puts together. And so that was our question.
Okay. And
And
so
I
that's,
was curious about the wayfinding. I thought all of the wayfinding was done, so but there's another 6,000 in here for wayfinding signs.
I think there's a phase two of that.
more that they want to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, if we're gonna get through this, this is an informational meeting, and I think it would be great to, let Jen finish her presentation, and if there's comments, but, I mean, we're talking about a midnight meeting, if we're gonna, review the whole budget, and so, and I myself am gonna have to go through. So, I just want to remind everybody,
So we've been here an hour, we're getting through it. I, in my mind, the general fund and the resort tax are the two most common questions with one. I'm okay as, you know, doing it like this, just, you know, and recognizing that we'll stop when we need to stop, like 7 o'clock rolls around and we're gonna start wrapping it up. But to Tom's point, streets, you can see the blue part of the pie chart is streets in terms of total resort tax. So budgeted,
Not
so
spent,
budgeted,
but budgeted.
budgeted expenditures. So the idea is, you know, we need to make sure that these projects are going to be spent on things that will actually improve the community in a substantial way, in a 34% way.
Right.
I think that was what Tom was getting at. So
Need sparkles on those streets.
need sparkles on the streets. I can just go with.
And I think it was more in line with the let's make sure we budget it in the padding things, but the trick is you can't have the padding be in the stuff that you really, really need.
Right.
And so I think part of it is we only come in at half. Which of the pie chart is going to be the stuff that was on the wish list that never got to? If it's perpetually streets, we have a problem.
Right, very good,
Was that fair?
very good. Questions about resort tax revenues or expenditures?
And just so you know, the resort tax project development is actually more of a wish list item. It will not be, you know, it could be a match for a grant for the park department, you know, it's not, but if we don't have it, that's probably not gonna be spent.
not spend it if you don't have to. Okay, going once, going twice. On to the next. So building code enforcement.
I'm gonna go back to
Oh, that was just a definition of the special fund. Not really, you guys can look through those aren't substantial. Building code, so it's funny, it's funny when you try to make a pie chart and it's 100%, they don't like that. So, the building and related permit is exactly where all of our revenue for these expenditures comes from. It comes from one place, it's estimated at $140,000 for the year. And then our estimated expenditures, are up here. And that corresponds with these line items on your sheet. Pointing out again, so in the notes, the 90% and the 100%, that just refers to how much of that person's FTE is covered by this particular fund. Just in case there was a question. I also understand, this is new information to me, but I heard this from yesterday. It's my understanding that the county is not going to reimburse us for the Black Mountain software. So that $3,150, which we have talked about as council people previously, if you've been to those meetings, and I'm sure you heard us talk about it, the idea was that we would, so that software module is necessary to keep track of the urban renewal district. And long story short, we need it. We don't have urban renewal district funds yet. We will, substantial funds pretty soon, but we don't have any yet because the district was just created. So the $3,150 is a cost that the city is going to have to eat until we get those urban renewal funds.
Can it be reimbursed after we get them?
Other questions on building expenses?
Just one, I noticed that there's not, any allocation here for office or building, electricity, gas, anything like that out of that budget, is that?
City Hall.
I understand that, but it's not.
City
Or-
Hall.
This is all under city, so building doesn't contribute any to their office.
for the prorating for that portion of that.
There's nothing prorated in building for that. That was just my question.
Can you do
Yes, you.
it? I haven't think about that.
Brian, pull your weight.
I know.
They're charging him. That is a great question. Okay. Are we ready to move on? Okay, we're moving on to gas tax. Yes, please, go for it. There's trees over here.
I have a note, something on the gas tax on the revenue. So
Please.
they did something different, and I'm not quite sure that there was a house bill that was passed. So gas tax revenues that are coming in are a lot. There's a one-time amount that the city is receiving. But they are combining the special gas tax fund, where before, when the council had to approve a resolution for projects, we had to fill out, we had to go online, we had to fill out a form, we had to request the money, and we had to specify a project. Well, they're going away with that. So there's like, our gas tax is now combined with the special gas tax, which I did break that still out though, so that you can still see the special gas tax money. But the 439.
439,440.
Yeah, is, what the state has sent us is what we're going to receive in gas tax money. Gas tax money though is specific and can only be spent on streets, sidewalks. It cannot be spent on anything else. It has to be street related.
So Lonnie, you're saying that significant jump from all our previous years to this year is is because of legislative changes, and some of it's a one-time only. Do you know how much of the sum of it is a one-time only?
Quite a bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's-
Usually gas tax is based on your mileage, so of the amount of
miles.
of roads and alleys within your area, within your town. So that's how they base how much you get on gas tax. That's why it's, they recommend not to abandon alleys, not to put dead-end streets, because those don't qualify then for gas tax money. So,
Dead-end streets don't qualify for gas tax.
Okay.
Cul-de-sacs and things like that.
So that explains why we have a jump from, 57,000, 60,000, 58,000 to 439,000.
yeah, and I just put the amount into the expenditure side, with Jim being on medical leave, this came in after he was, so we just plugged it all in there. He hasn't had a chance to specifically, but the special gas tax funds and stuff, he's using that money for more alleys, which you guys have seen.
Yep.
So he plans on doing a couple more alleys with that special, but the rest of it I'm not quite sure. But that's why I just plugged it all in there, so it's all in there. If you want.
And is that his choice to do alleys as opposed to streets?
Costway. Alleys are cheaper than doing it.
My understanding is you have to have it project specific and you have to be able to complete the whole project.
Oh, you did before.
No, now you don't.
Okay, yeah, you don't.
Yeah, that's the way it was before.
So because we lost a lot of streets because of the flood, and they haven't been repaired in the last year,
And we're still working on that. With the,
so you're waiting until the FEMA.
My understanding on that is that if you repair it before you get the FEMA funds, they won't give you FEMA funds, they won't give you any.
Of course they will.
Right.
On that topic of streets, I'd just like to remind the council in general, you guys weren't necessarily here, but several years back, they imposed a special tax up on the west bench. And so everybody got several $1,000s extra added to their tax bill. And one of the guarantees or representations that the city made, I'm sure it's in city minutes, is that the city would make sure that they maintained it at least until we had it paid off. And so I would like to make sure that they, because we have cracks and stuff that's going in there, and the whole idea of how they got done and the convincing was, these streets aren't gone yet, it'll be worth it to fix it now, it'll ultimately be cheaper in the long run, you guys pick up the bill. And the question was, will they be maintained? And Lonnie's not going, oh, I remember that. The representation was they would be maintained at least as long as it takes us to pay them off. So I haven't seen that, so please keep that in mind.
Is that broken out in here maybe somewhere?
Where was that?
The
Where
SRD,
should that go?
Special Improvement District, you're collecting extra funds.
Right, and so that's
the
not,
taxes.
it's not in these funds. There's different.
They have their own,
To specifically to pay
To
that.
pay back,
Yeah.
so, but gas tax can be used, like I said, for what you, the maintenance of streets and stuff. That's what gas tax can be used. And there's only a certain percentage of gas tax that can be used for capital.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Okay, so gas tax, budgeted expenditures, any other questions about gas tax? Okay. Water enterprise funds. Okay, so enterprise funds are like a fee for service. That's how you can think about enterprise funds, essentially. And so when you pay your water and sewer bill, that money goes into a special account to upkeep water and sewer infrastructure and supporting maintenance. So that's what we're talking about next, water, sewer, and solid waste, and those are all enterprise funds. So on the revenue side, we've got obviously paying your water bill. That's the blue part, the dark blue part. We do have some transfer from resort tax over here to support water capital improvement projects. Sorry,
Payback bonds.
to pay back bonds, exactly. Thank you. And then, we've got sales of water materials and supplies, a couple other things, nothing super the resort tax and the paying your water bill are the biggest things to see here. And then looking at expenditures, okay, so, salaries are broken out again in the notes here, so, all of these folks get paid a little bit out of the water fund based on what amount of work they do related to water infrastructure, and support. And,
all of those are weighted.
those are all weighted, yep, thank you. And it does say salaries and benefits under the total, so I think. So that's the largest expense, line. We talk a little bit about depreciation just because it's a significant line, you know.
Yeah, and that was not, so when I talked about the auditors coming with year end, they go through our assets and they calculate the depreciation for us. So it's dependent on how much equipment is tied to those funds, is where that depreciation number comes into play.
Very good. Okay. So also another significant chunk we pay engineers out of this fund and the sewer fund to help us with projects. You can see here, you know, asphalt related to repairing the road after there's the water, you know, after we repair some of the water infrastructure. Electricity is here, and you'll notice that that's a sizable uptick from last year, in both the fund and in this one, I think. Again, trying to anticipate those increases from Northwestern Energy. And then, you know, when water and sewer equipment breaks, it's expensive to fix, so those categories also have sizable budgets. Any questions on these line items? And again, there's a lot of line items here, so if you leave today and you have questions, you can always email me and we will work on those.
And does Northwest give us guidelines to what to expect?
About the electricity going up? That's a good question. Have you gotten anything there?
No, the only thing is what I've read, it's, you know, the news is 28%, so we don't know what's gonna be that going on.
Molly, can I just ask you a quick question about depreciation?
Yeah.
Because that's not really a cash outlay, it's it's a balance sheet.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm like, I guess I didn't understand why we would have it on here, because or did the auditors want it on here?
Yeah,
It doesn't make a lot of sense
It does
because
get budget, so.
this is like an income expense versus a balance sheet.
Yeah. They wanted to put it in there.
Okay.
Just a quick question on the engineering, there's $600,000 in engineering expenses. Is that just general yearly consulting services, or is that for planned projects?
It's all the projects that we've been working on. So, and there are some miscellaneous stuff that we have on, that we included in there, but the majority of it is the projects that are going on. So there's like the ones that were a lot, the grant, and it is also doing like the PDR that they're working on, the water and sewer stuff.
Yeah. It's water and sewer projects that were in the CIP, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay. Other questions on water? Moving right along, we'll get to the sewer fund. Same deal. So when you know, this money, you know, just, yeah, you're already on it. Okay, so the big blue chunk is what you pay for sewer service. And then again, another transfer from resort tax to pay for the sewer bonds, I think. And then we've got some permits here for, you know, probably building and stuff. There's nothing really too significant to talk about here. To Tom's point, there is another $300,000 in expenditures for engineering here, because water and sewer typically, you know, go together in here.
I was just kind of curious why the water and sewer revenues didn't go up with all the new bills, or it went up, but, you know, not significantly. Well, the water and sewer, the revenue, Well, I see that you made,
Mm-hmm.
and then the budget is less than that, same with the water.
Yeah, we're just, that's just,
We're not trying to put,
I'm trying to guess.
So is that what being conservative with revenue? Yeah, okay. Which is a smart thing to do. Okay. I'm gonna move right along because we're at quarter so. And we're gonna talk about solid waste, and that's the last one for today. So, solid waste, and, you know, Wani mentioned this a second ago, she, added the recycling center revenues and expenditures also to solid waste. That's new for this year. So it's broken out in the printouts that you have here and in the, revenue and expenditures that she's produced for everybody. And then for these, pie charts and for the presentation, they are put together, so.
But 16.4% represents the whole 129,000.
Right. Yep. It represents recycling user fees, 109,000.
That's a question on,
That's the revenue
It
side.
doesn't have any of this membership.
hey, Jen, on the revenue side, did we get, how much cash did we get from that? Wasn't there supposed to be $25,000 or $35,000 that came in when we took over recycling?
Yes, that is a great question. So I believe when we took it in, and actually I think it's on Lonnie's expenditure. So on Lonnie's expenditure sheet, it has $10,000 for site improvements, and that's cash available. I think that's what we absorbed from the nonprofit, right?
Yeah, and we're still waiting
Okay.
on campus to have that final number, but we'll have that. So one thing to note, when she did the revenues in here, that doesn't include the cash available that's sitting there as of July 1st, the end of June to July 1st. The total number though on the expenditures is a makeup of, like on the general fund, it's cash dollars, cash available, and the anticipated non-tax revenue coming in. That's how you build off your expenditure budget. So on like the enterprising fund, you don't get tax money. So it's your cash available at the end of the year, and then whatever anticipated revenue you are going to receive, and that's how you build off your expenditure budget. So we don't have what the cash for the recycling center is yet. So when it comes, you have that.
And it is, I think we estimated it was somewhere around $25,000 or $30,000.
25 to 35 is
Yeah.
what I heard.
But that's why it's not in the revenue side.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And in terms of expenditures, we had said, looking at this budget the first time, that we would take some of that transferred money to spend $10,000 on a new baler because we anticipated we would need it. And so, or two, and that's why that's there as an expected expenditure, but it says cash available. If we didn't have that cash available, we wouldn't be spending it. We wouldn't be spending other money on a baler.
Yeah, and those
That's what I
funds
recollect.
are all regulated as to how much of a cushion they can grow. They said if the service is coming in, how much is going out, and you're allowed to build a cushion, but I think most of them are about 15 or 20%.
The general fund has restricted, the enterprise fund do not.
You know, like a restriction.
Uh-huh.
No, the general fund does have restrictions on how much you can have in. And then building department, they changed that. It used to be a 1 year you could have, and 1 year's worth of budget in reserve. They changed it to 3 years. So that actually helps.
Which makes sense when you think about enterprise funds, because a lot of those projects cost significant dollars, and so if you can roll over income to save for the big projects, then you
Yeah, and then you don't
have
have
the
to
ability
shut
to do
on
that.
or anything.
So speaking of that, do we have a slide on reserves?
No, I don't, she doesn't have that yet. I don't have that one done, but that is the one that ultimately the council will approve. That includes all of the tax revenue funds, and then a separate one that has all the tax revenue.
Okay,
Is it two resolutions that we passed, or is it all included in one?
It's one that has all of the funds.
Okay. So when we get that reserve info, then we'll have it for our voting.
Are all of these supposed to have depreciation?
Mhm.
Just the ones with
Enterprise
the-
fund. Just the enterprise ones, right? All right, so solid waste, yeah, again, nothing too, like, we just talked about recycling being new. I'll point out that on the revenue side, there's a little bit of money set aside for like making some money off of recycled commodity. But we also were thoughtful when developing that budget about being very conservative about those numbers and making sure that we didn't rely on them in order to run the recycling center because those markets are so volatile. So then solid waste expenditures, yeah, there we go. That big red section is our contract with Allied, and that will be up for negotiation next year, I believe. I believe it's next year is when we start, well, but we'll start negotiations next year. Keep in mind for that. Any questions on solid waste working expenditures or revenue budget? Look at us go. Okay. 649. Okay. I want to show you an example of a budget resolution. If you click on it, it'll actually, back up. Like it's a live link, so you can go and see last year's. Oh, that is weird. Ew. Wow. You have to click control. Give it a second. It'll do it. So slow. Okay, so this is what last year's looks like. So for council and everybody, it'll show all of the fund names and the non-tax revenue and the property tax assessment and mills, and then we so that is like, it's really funny that it's this much information, but the resolution is one page. But just to give you an example of what that looks like, and that's what we'll be talking about and voting on. And then close that out. We're almost done. Oh, back open. All right. So we took some questions. Yeah, and I'll go back to my slideshow too. Okay. So thanks for sticking with me, folks. So we compiled a list of questions. A number of the questions that we came in, or that have come in so far, are related to the audit, the most recent city audit. So again, as we said, we get the city conducts an audit every year. I did my best to try to answer these questions. Some of them are not answered because we don't have an answer yet. Some of them I often refer to, like all audits are available on the state's website. They're also accessible via link on the city's website. And so I've included a live link here to the city's website so that you can go and look at the audit yourself if you want to. But I will take the next 4 minutes to kind of go through these really quickly. So a question was asked earlier about why does it take the audit 9 months to complete? And so the reality is we get the audit report like in March or something around that time frame, or at least we did last year. But the actual audit only takes 4 or 5 days. The auditors are here, they set up over there. It's the whole thing. They have their own computers and everything. They come to town and they do their jam. But we are put into their yearly calendar and they get to us when they get to us. And there's
So we don't choose who we get to, who does
I mean, we
that?
can select our auditor, but we have a contract with them to do it for X number of years, I think, right?
And we generally change it up every few years,
Right.
just to make sure.
Which is healthy. Yeah. And all of the auditors really have the same, it's not the case that our auditor acts especially different, like all the auditors do that. When does the auditor receive the final numbers from the city? Usually they come in August. So again, we talked about how they do an audit for us, and also they come at the end of the year to help the staff close the books. So that happens around August. They assist the administrative staff with year-end closing, and then the final numbers, they get those when it's time to do the audit. How could financial statements be completed more expeditiously? But, so again, I think the question is if you're referring to the audit report, that's dependent on when we're scheduled by the auditors. We don't have a lot of say over that. However, the city is required to submit an annual financial report every year by December 31st. And that report is approved by the state and it is accessible via the city's website. And there's a live link to that there. Our monthly or quarterly financials done in a reasonable time? Yes, they are. There's a month-by-month expenditure revenue report also posted on the city's website for public review. And 2 out of the 3 of us every single month do a review of claims. And then we also have a quarterly report that the council receives. If so, do you know if variances in the budget are explained? So budgets are projections. There's going to be variances periodically, often. The monthly reports are not accompanied by like some kind of summary of every variance. However, city staff alert this committee to any of the out of the ordinary or substantially different or unexpected expenditures. And when we do process those claims, there are asterisks denoted by any amounts that were not budgeted for. So we are alerted to those every month. Does the city clerk understand the auditor's statements or find them helpful, particularly since they arrive 9 months after fiscal year ends? Yes, they are still important. You know, they're still useful. And also, the clerk and the other staff here are work closely with our auditors. They have a good working relationship with them. They can call them whenever there's questions or concerns about how we're doing things, and they help us with implementing changes. So that's, I think that's one thing I want to just emphasize is like, what's the purpose of an audit? So we do it every year with the intention of getting feedback on how to sharpen up policies and procedures. That's the point of an audit. If we paid $25,000 and our auditor came back and said, you're doing fine, thumbs up, there's nothing to improve, I would say they're not doing their job. Like, we want feedback on how to improve, we can always improve. And so I just want to clarify that just because there were findings in an audit report doesn't mean there's anything substantially amiss going on. An auditor, and that's the whole reason why we have audit reports, is to better improve our policies and procedures. Let's see. Can the city clerk translate the auditor statements into a format that the average person would understand for transparency? I understand the idea that, I understand that it's really frustrating to be like, okay, fine, there's an auditor's report that I can go look at, but am I going to be able to understand it? Kind of the same thing with these. And what I would say is, you know, if the community decided that that would be a good use of tax dollars, we would need to allot time and resources for that purpose. I get that it's frustrating and confusing, and also I don't know that that's the best use of our limited city staff time. Could the city employ a local accountant to do so? We could. And again, the community would have to weigh in on if that's a good use of tax dollars. Where are variances spending or revenue versus budget explained? So I believe that this question was meant to read revenue versus expenditures, or perhaps expenditures versus budgeted, what was expected. In either case, once again, that month-to-month expenditure or revenue report is posted on the city's website. Can you tell me how the city is addressing issue 007 of the audit? And there is an updated written budget review process that was provided to the state as an answer to this particular question. It is, I did put it as a reference slide on here if anybody wants to take a look at it. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time tonight talking about line items in the audit. Who generates responses to the findings listed in the city audit report, and who generated the responses for 2022? Again, I want to note that the Admin and Finance Committee for the City Council was not reformed until July 26, 2022. So I don't know the full answer to who generated responses to those findings. I can figure that out, and maybe if we need to have a separate conversation about the audit in particular, we could do that at a future meeting. Again, please address the list of findings that were raised in the 2021 audit report and why they've not been resolved, and then references to a particular page. So again, I think, you know, this is a conversation about understanding our current budget. if we want to have a conversation as a community about going over the last audit, we can make separate time to do that. We got a request for salary benefits, perks, and also job descriptions. And I think that was related to the fact that, you know, our city staff have allocations in here. So based on what they do on a daily basis, you know, water fund may pay for some of their salary and general fund will pay for some. That is regularly reviewed, and I will, this was a city council question, and so I will get with the city council person on that, but I feel like that's a thing that we can resolve by city council people talking to the mayor and us, so that we can better understand those percentages and making sure that they jive with what the folks are actually doing. Are the costs for a solely city-run airport accounted for in the 2023-2024 budget? They are not. The costs associated with the airport are estimated based on last year's expenses only. However, if it's the case that we are going to run the airport differently in the future, that's what budget amendments are for, and we can submit a request for a budget amendment if that's necessary. Why is the librarian for the city of Red Lodge the highest paid librarian in the state? That's an interesting question. I don't know that she is. I haven't looked it up. It's probably true. What I will say is, so we kind of talked about the library budget already. We have a set number of mills that we give to the library, and the library determines how that money should be spent. Additionally, the librarian is considered a department head in the same way that the rest of the folks who run these departments are considered department heads. And her salary is allocated based on bargaining agreements that we have for our city staff. And so she's put in there based on her time and experience as a department head.
One of the most experienced librarians in the state.
Yep. Almost done. I don't see any admin assistance or travel under the mayor's category of general fund. What about costs associated with communications with officials and businesses and visiting other mayors and attending functions beneficial to the office? So it is the case that there is not admin assistance or travel under the mayor's budget, and this is something we could talk about as council in the future, whether or not that's necessary. Okay, so those are the questions that I have received to date. Next step, so again, the draft budget will be reviewed by City Council on July 25th. There will be public hearings on the draft budget. Again, I wrote, those dates are wrong. I think it will be August 8th. It'll be August.
That's an extra Tuesday.
I think it'll be 8th and the 22nd. So I'll update those, sorry. And with the finalized budget submitted to the state before I wrote the September deadline. Why, maybe you can help me with those dates after.
Yeah.
The public workshop on last year's audit, if we want to do that, we can set that up. Future meetings to discuss and inform the public on options for increasing the general fund to meet the current needs of the community. I would like to talk to folks about that. So there'll be an upcoming meeting to talk about that. And just to kind of give it full circle, you have to understand this budget and where things are coming from and what money is being spent on what before you can have a conversation about whether or not we want to somehow increase taxes or have a special levy to bring more money into the general fund. So don't forget to attend the Department of Revenue virtual meeting on the 25th. And that's it.
And then again, Jen, just
Yes.
to make sure it's clear, so all the questions are going to be out on the web for people to see that and their
Yep.
answers. And if people have any other questions now that they have this to look at along with the numbers, they can submit it by Tuesday? Is that, or when is your deadline to receive?
That's a
those?
great question. I didn't give anybody a deadline. I think Tuesday would be good because then as city council, then I have something to provide the city council at the next meeting. And just know that it might take more than a couple of days to get all the answers, but all the questions will be there and available.
Okay, so by Tuesday, any additional questions that come up after you reread all the material?
Okay.
And I'd like to thank Jen for making this presentation.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Jen.
This is something that's been around for exceptional. The public understands, and she's done a lot of work on this. So thank you, Jen.
Thanks, Jen.
And got lots of help. All right, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it, and I hope you all have a good day in the sunshine. Yay! Thanks, Tim. Thank you.
And Jody and Chris.
I appreciate having a baby to
I know.
hang out with us.
Thank you. Right.
Yeah, thanks for coming. And thanks for letting us know about that link, Gary. We'll figure it out.
Hey, Jen, I'll go ahead and I'll write up what I wrote down.
I'm so appreciative. Thank you, Terry.
Yeah.
Yes, right. So, it is, but it's right before it ends. 4 to 5:30, and then our meetings are. And it's all in there, 5:30, budget review. It starts at 5:30. Yes, you're right. You're right. So you'll finish that meeting and then you'll come right over here.
I got all this on
Yeah.
Yeah, so starting tomorrow, probably, because Lonnie's gonna go home today. Well, deserved.
Oh,
break.
I fractured.
So if you go to the city's